다음은 이어서 패기 존슨 연사님과의 패널 토크가 진행됩니다. 진행은 블룸버그의 수석 AI 기자이신 사리타 라이나님께서 맡아주시겠습니다. 그럼 기자님을 큰 박수로 맞아주시길 바라겠습니다. Please welcome and read a big hand.
Good morning, everyone. These days, humanoids conferences are about as common as AI conferences. Humanoid demos, whether in Tokyo or in Beijing or in San Francisco, are becoming pretty commonplace. So my first question to Peggy is, one hears about coffee making, parkour racing, backflipping robots, humanoids, Peggy. How much of this is hype and how much of it is real?
Well, it's a good question. There is quite a bit of razzle-dazzle right now in the humanoid area. All of those things, the robots we've seen demos and we've seen videos of that. The thing is, you're generally not paid to do a backflip or to make coffee. So we have been focused on enterprise hardening our robot and ensuring that we could fulfill the requirements that large companies need in order to meet that labor gap. And so we focused on the movement of material initially, but eventually, as you saw, we'll move into other areas, and then eventually the home where maybe a robot will make my coffee in the morning.
I would love that.
Wouldn't it? That would be kind of nice.
At home as well. Peggy, agility has sort of been like at the forefront of commercializing humanoids, and I saw that you said somewhere that you will go from making hundreds of robots in your Oregon factory to tens of thousands in the coming years. Could you give us a peek into the future of what is coming in humanoids?
Yeah, so because that labor gap is very real, companies are looking for solutions, and humanoids can be part of the solution that they have. We're starting what may seem small, but that's actually the warehousing. In just the US alone, that is a $200 billion addressable market that we can put humanoids in. That's just one area of focus. But then as you start to move into retail, into automotive, into healthcare, pharmaceutical, any company that moves things around or needs low-skilled work, robots can step in. So because of the demand we were seeing, we decided it made sense to build our own factory. We built in a little city in a small state in the US called Oregon. It's about an hour actually outside of Oregon State University in Salem. And we, over the next couple of years, will have the capacity to make 10,000 robots a year there. And that's to feed this demand that we're seeing. Because they can't get humans to step in, they can't find that labor, and it hurts their business. So there's a real push from enterprises to find solutions in this area, and humanoids can do that.
One hears about humanoids in BMW factories and Mercedes-Benz factories as well, from Aptronic or Figure. And you're talking about taking yours already into the automotive factories. Can you tell us what is the difference in capabilities of what you have currently in the Amazon and Spanx warehouses versus when you go into this new industry?
Yeah, so automotive factories, like other companies, have a lot of material movement. So they're moving parts around and things. They tend to be a little bit heavier. Metal things that might roll around in the bins, and the robot has to be, just like a human, you have to be able to stabilize that box. They're longer, and so we had to make some adjustments in order to handle the bigger totes, they're called, and to handle the type of product going into the totes. We made those adjustments to the torso and to the body of digit, but the biggest adjustment was the hand, or the end effector. That's the robotic word for a hand, end effector. And we found that if we could take the existing gripper hand off and put a different hand on, and when I say hand, it's almost never a 5-finger hand. We actually don't use all 5 of our fingers very often, but when you're moving boxes around, it's more of a grip. And that's what we built for the company that we're working with. That then attracted the attention of literally across the board, all of the automotives who have the same problem. But now that that capability exists, we can put any tool on the end of the robot and do a better job. So for instance, if you have a screw and a drill, a human might hold the screw and put a drill in, we can build that all into one tool and feed the screw through and have the robot do that. And then they might do that in the morning, and in the afternoon, they might move cardboard boxes. So it's very versatile, it's autonomous, and it's multi-purpose.
What do you see as like the 3 biggest challenges in taking these humanoids from the work cell, as you put it, to collaborative work with humans?
Yeah, so these humanoids are not small. They are generally the size and shape of a human. So they're about 70 kilograms, 70 kilograms, and about 1.75 meters in height. So a typical human size. And if one of them falls, and they do fall at times, you need to ensure that nothing damages the human or the surroundings. So you have to fall in a very controlled manner. And if you think about it, if they're carrying something, you don't want the robot just to fall and then spill everything. You have to take that into account as well. So it's a very difficult problem to solve in humanoids. For the small tugs that I showed, it's a bit easier to solve. Humanoids are complex, and we've worked on some solutions in that area to take the robot gracefully down to the ground and continue holding the payload and ensure that no damage happens to the payload or to the human, because that is really the idea. If there's an aisle like this narrow aisle here, and you're walking this way, and the humanoid's walking that way, it needs to sense that you're coming, you're a human, and I need to be careful. And so a lot of that interaction is what we've been working on, and we'll be able to demo it mid-next year.
Could you give us a peek into what Agility is doing next year?
So next year, we will become cooperatively safe. We're excited about that. The other big problem area is the battery. Think about the early days of mobile phone when the battery was always a problem, and until there was better battery technology and there was the ability to put bigger batteries in, they were always dying. The similar thing happens with robots. In fact, a lot of the ones that you see right now, the battery time is very, very short. And that means they can't actually go to work.
For example, how long?
Some we're seeing that are only 20 minutes or so. And so that's great for research, for demos. That's wonderful because we want to teach the next generation of students how to operate and to learn and to start to develop robots. But that's not what these companies need. They need a robot that can come in and maybe with a few recharges work all day long. So right now we are at about a 4-to-1 work to charge ratio. So if the robot works for 40 minutes, it has to come back and charge for 10 minutes. And that's doable today. We usually have 2 robots working in tandem, and when one's battery runs low, they walk back and they get plugged in. We're moving with our next generation to 10-to-1. So 100 minutes of work and 10 minutes of charge. It's very rapid charge. We're really excited about it because it's graphene-based, so it's using a new area of batteries that there's been some real innovation in. And at least for humanoids, we'll have an exclusivity on that. with the company that we've been working with. So we're excited about that and to bring that to our market because that's what our customers are demanding.
There's a lot of conversation, Peggy, around pricing versus how much work these humanoids can do. Some of the conversations around AI typically revolve around whether AI is just now affordable enough to actually replace humans, and in a lot of work, it is not. So I just wonder, where do you think humanoids are going in terms of pricing? Can you sort of give us a window into the pricing aspect of humanoids in the coming years?
Yeah, so there's basically two models. There's a CapEx model where the company buys the robot up front and there's an ongoing, service fee. And then there's a RaaS model where it's robot as a service. And we, with our company in Atlanta, GXO, signed the very first humanoid robot as a service model. It's multi-year, and they pay us monthly. And the model that you can think of is we will charge a discount to their current human labor. And that's an acceptable model. That's an ROI that they can live with. We usually don't quote numbers in this area because every company is different about what their hourly, fully loaded labor is, and then it's very different between countries. So some areas of the world, there's lower. There are other areas of the world that's higher. Our goal is to charge a discount on that particular company's human labor.
Could you give us an idea of what, when I look at the minimum wage in a state like Oregon, $16 an hour is what it is currently, about that. And I just wonder, is pricing sort of going to factor in what minimum wage is and then try to discount that, or is that going to be very heavily linked to manufacturing and, the pricing advantages that you can eke out of, making them cheaper?
Yeah, so we'll definitely make them cheaper over time, clearly with volume, and a lot of it is off-the-shelf parts. The actuators, the things that make it move are the secret sauce, if you will. But we've taken cues from, in the US at least, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS. There's a range, but in the US, it's roughly $25 to $30 an hour, fully burdened. So that's everything in, healthcare and all of that. And so whatever that number is for each country and company is where we'll try to work around that. That's our goal. And that provides an ROI for the manufacturer or the facility operator.
Some of the most animated conversations around AI in the last year and a half to 2 years have revolved around jobs, Peggy. And when you talk about humanoids, they really represent the most visible representation of ourselves. And in the US, you see port workers, for example, striking against, I think there's another one coming up in December, striking against automation of the more basic kind. Humanoids haven't gotten there yet. But I just wonder, what is the conversation that executives like you, government, policymakers, are having around jobs, and should workers in factories be concerned, and how much into the future do you actually see, this playing out?
Yeah. So the way we see it is we actually aren't stepping in to take a full job. We take tasks that the human generally doesn't like as part of their job. So oftentimes they're not working 7.5, 8 hours a day just moving boxes. They might do that for a few hours, and then they're off in a different area of the facility doing a different job. So the tasks that we're focused on are the ones where there's a lot of injuries. There's a lot of back injuries. There's a lot of workman's comp issues. There's fatigue. They're dirty. They're very monotonous. those are the ones that we're focused on, and it's the tasks that we're taking off the human's plate. What we found after we have gone into many of these customers and run proof of concepts is the human worker very much realizes that this is actually a tool for them. So their job gets easier. They don't have to do that part of the job they didn't like, and it frees them up to do other jobs in the facility, one being a digital worker. So somebody has to operate the robots and track the fleet of robots that are happening. Oftentimes the robot is talking to another robot, and all of that has to be managed. So the employees who have been introduced to humanoids have found them to be a great tool for their job, and they've been freed up to upskill and to learn to become more of a digital worker, basically, and to have a digital component to their job, which then sets them on their way for further career progression. So it's actually, in the companies that we have been working in, been quite welcomed by the employees.
Yeah, but we are kind of at the early stage of this whole cycle, Peggy. So, I was listening to a conversation at the panel earlier this morning, and there were speakers talking about 40% productivity gains. One of them actually hazarded that there will be job losses. I just wonder, we are talking about productivity gains. We are still early in this whole journey, and I wonder, enhancing humans is where it is now, but once the human is enhanced, and will you need the same number of workers to do the same type of work and the same hours as you will today?
Yeah, it's a good question, Saritha. There's been a lot of conversation about this. I think the way to look at it is, 100 years ago, farmers in the field were working 12-hour days, and then it was, we started working 10-hour days, and then 8-hour days, and there's a lot of people pushing for 4-day work weeks. What these devices can do is take some of those tasks off our plate that allows us to work less, to perhaps be more creative, to pursue a talent that we hadn't had time to. So we're really focused on the cycles that it'll free up for humans in order to pursue things that are less monotonous than these sorts of tasks that I showed earlier.
Yes, dull, dirty, dangerous. But once you've done with the dull, dirty, dangerous, will they come after, will you have a humanoid sitting on a panel like this talking to you, Peggy? I'm not seeing you replaced, but I could well see, a humanoid asking you these questions.
An interviewer. That's very far in the future. I think they'll slowly be introduced first into our work lives, and hopefully it'll be like every other tool in our life that we've come to really adopt and enjoy, like our mobile phones, and it becomes a part of our lives, and they augment our lives, whether that's at work or at home, and we see the value in them.
We are sitting in South Korea where people are very concerned about the demographic decline and, talking about how to augment human labor by bringing in robotic automation. And I wanted to ask you, Peggy, how much of, that is something that you're factoring into your strategy and your plans as you go into the future?
It's definitely something we've heard quite a bit about as we've been traveling this week in Seoul, talking to companies. There is a concern that out there in the not too distant future, it could be challenging to find workers for some of the jobs that workers are in today because of the demographics that you're talking about. So I think humanoids can help solve for that. The companies that we spoke with were very eager to learn more about them, to be informed about them, to understand what their capabilities are today and where it's going, to see if it's a fit for them in the longer term in their businesses.
when you talk about AI, there is this sort of, up and down between the US and China. Of course, humanoids, there are a bunch of countries making them now. But I just wonder, in the humanoids advances, how do you see China's humanoid companies and humanoid startups playing against the US humanoids companies such as yourselves or Figure or some of these very high-profile humanoids makers in the US? Do you think that this is going to be another aspect of US-China competitiveness?
Possibly, we've seen in AI, we saw in mobile phones early on and things like that. I do think that for any company to be competitive in the type of work we're showing here, they're going to have to meet the physicality of the job. They're going to have to understand the environment and plug into the existing corporate IT infrastructure. They're going to have to understand the safety, compliance, and regulatory issues to operate. To even walk in the door of one of those facilities, you have to meet all of those bars. A lot of the robots, Chinese included and others, some of them are smaller, still in dimension, excellent for R&D, for academia to understand how robotics work, to educate, so students can learn about the field of robotics. But in order to take the jobs that we're talking about, is a different kind of a robot. It has to be enterprise hardened and it has to be able to meet those other bars, not the least of which is safety. That's a really big one. All power to them. I think the more competitors in the field, the better we're getting, the smarter we're getting, and we'll end up making better robots across the board. So definitely welcome the competition.
Yeah. When it comes to autonomous vehicles, we've seen sort of the safety issue become like sort of a hurdle for faster-paced advancements. God forbid, we haven't seen anything like that in the humanoids, but how much of conversations around safety and compliance do companies like you have to be involved with governments as things progress in the field?
It is the number one challenge in humanoids, meeting the safety bar, number one challenge. If you can't meet the safety bar, robots won't progress, which is why we've had such a focus on it. We're also getting very involved in setting the standards, the regulatory standards, and bringing sort of the wealth of knowledge that we've had operating amongst companies for the last 3 years to that forum and having our voice be part of the formulation of the safety standards around humanoids. So it is the bar that must be met in order for broad adoption of these sorts of devices.
We might have time for 1 or 2 questions from the floor, so I ask you to keep your questions ready while I ask Peggy my last question. Peggy, what are the 3 top things in your life that you would want humanoids to disintermediate?
The jobs I don't like. I cannot cook at all. I cannot cook. I know I'm a failure in that area. I would love a robot to cook, for sure. I would love a robot to do the laundry, for sure. And really just about anything around the house. If a robot could do that, I would be very happy.
I know some robots are cooking Indian food, so if you are a lover of Indian food.
I love Indian food. My daughter-in-law is Indian, so definitely I want that.
One last quick question, if we have it, but I think we are running out of time. So we will close this fantastic session with Peggy with that one question. Thank you so much, audience. Can we have a big round of applause for our fantastic speaker?
Thank you, Saritha.